Hey everyone, this is Peter Skov from Music is a Journey. Look what I picked up recently from Yahoo Auction. This is the original album, the Lee Aaron Project, the album that launched her recording career way back in 1982. And this is also the original cover. Now, the album was later on released in 1984 when she joined up with the Attic Records for her next album, Metal Queen, but this is the cover that came out for that one. But it's the same material. This is just listed, titled as Lee Aaron, and the original album was the Lee Aaron Project. The reason being was this was exactly a project. And you can see on the cover we've got a guitar case and a cable that looks a bit like a snake, actually, the way it's coiled up here, and then we have a bunch of stickers all stuck onto this guitar case here. So when I was eyeballing this and taking a look at the stickers on the cover, I became a little bit interested what was going on here. So let's have a peek, because I want to go through most of the stickers on here one by one, which will allow me to introduce to you who was involved with the recording of this album. So let's take a look. So let's just drift in and take a close look at the album cover here. We're first going to notice that there is a Triumph sticker here on the album cover. This is due to Rick Emmett's involvement in the album. He's actually only involved on the very first song on the album, Under Your Spell, which includes him on backing vocals and as well co-producing the track. The famous lineup of Triumph is Rick Emmett on vocals and guitars, Gil Moore on vocals and drums, and Mike Levine on bass and keyboards. They were, of course, a power trio out of Toronto. They formed originally without Rick Emmett. There were two other members in the band, but they left, and they got Rick Emmett in, and he joined in 1975, and they released their debut album in 1976. Their third album, Just a Game, produced one of their biggest songs, Lay It on the Line, which you've probably heard. Lay It on the Line actually became a big hit in many cities across the United States, and in fact went to #1 in St. Louis. The fourth album, Allied Forces, went up to number 23 on the US rock charts. Was that Billboard? And in Canada it went up to actually number 13. This album features some of their best known tracks, such as Magic Power and Fight the Good Fight, two excellent tracks. And really an excellent album showcasing what Triumph is capable of. They're interesting as a very hard rock band, sometimes going more in the straight up hard rock route, sometimes getting a little bit more on the heavy side or even on the progressive side, and Rick Emmett putting in things such as classical guitar pieces, sometimes adding in even there was a bit of flamenco in one track one time and some other jazz or blues, so there is that progressive edge. And of course in some ways Triumph are regarded in the shadow of Rush, because they're both power trios from the Toronto area. They both have sensational guitarists, they both have very talented musicians, just Rush is always regarded much more highly than Triumph. But you know, for me in the 1980s, Triumph was my favorite because Triumph rocked a lot harder than Rush did when it came to Power Windows and Hold Your Fire. My favorite track, one of my favorite Triumph tracks, is here from Progressions of Power. It is the song Nature's Child. It is a particularly heavy rocker with one excellent energetic guitar solo, and there are some really cool effects with pick slides in between the lead guitar work, as well as just some intense rubbing of the pick, I think, over the fretboard, giving a kind of effect, which I find just really gives that sense of urgency and energy in the music, which I love. So that's always remained a favorite of mine, Nature's Child from Progressions of Power. And Never Surrender, there are two tracks from here. All the Way went to number 2 on the rock charts, and A World of Fantasy went to number 3, as well as the title track Never Surrender is also one of their more famous tracks. So that's Triumph and Triumph's connection with the Lee Aaron Project. So next up, let's move around this guitar case and see what else we can find. Well, now here's a familiar name to a lot of you 70s hard rock fans. This is Moxy. Moxy are perhaps best known amongst Americans for their debut album of 1975 because the lead guitar solos on not eight, there are 8 tracks. On maybe 6 of the tracks here were actually performed by Tommy Bolin. And the story is it that the recording engineer got into some disagreements with guitarist Earl Johnson and told him to get out of the studio, but they needed somebody to record the lead guitar solos for at least 6 of the tracks anyway. Tommy Bolin happened to be nearby. He'd heard of Moxy. He liked what the band were doing. And I think it was the producer or the engineer who knew him and asked him if he would come in and play the lead work. So Tommy Bolin provides lead guitar on, I think it was all but 2. So since there are 8 tracks, that probably means 6 tracks on this album. They followed it up with Moxy 2, very similar looking cover, but anyway, in 1976. And the song Gates of Hell is really like the next stage of heavy metal. I think you could put this in there as like an early form of new wave of British heavy metal style, Gates of Hell, even though they're from Canada. And in 1978, Riding High, which is also, this band is a really heavy, hard-hitting rock band. Like, yeah, if you like just really hard, heavy rock music with a vocalist, Buzz Sherman, who's got that really, whiskey-throated, rough voice and can really scream if he wants to, Moxy's a great band to check out. So, Moxy vocalist Buzz Sherman appears on the song Texas Chainsaw. Oh, there's Lee Aaron there, young girl. Texas Chainsaw, Texas Outlaw on side 1. He's actually singing a duet with her, but I know his vocal lines actually take up more than hers. It's more like she is accompanying him. Also on her cover of I Just Want to Make Love To You on the beginning of side B, Moxy guitarist Earl Johnson appears. And Buzz Sherman again appears on the track Should Have Known, the second to last one on side B. Earl Johnson also appearing on that one too. So that's Moxy's connection with the Lee Aaron project. Let's take a look at what else is on this guitar case. Moving away from Moxy, here's another name that might be familiar to some of you, especially if you're in Canada. This is the band Santers. Santers was formed in 1979 with brother Rick Santers on guitars, vocals, and keyboards, and brother Mark Santers on drums and vocals. Also, bass player Rick Lazaroff comes in, making the band a 3-piece. Oh, we've got Rush, Triumph, and Santers. The Santers brothers had classical training, according to the article about the band on their website, and Rick Lazaroff was a jazz-influenced bass player. The band released 3 albums. The first one here, Shot Down in Flames, which is also a title that's a tribute to AC/DC's Bon Scott. They released this is Racing Time. Racing Time. I think it's like, racing against time type of thing. Racing Time. And Guitar Alley, all released there in the early 1980s. Now, they recorded a 4th album, which was not released immediately, but later on, Top Secrecy came out. And these 4 albums were put together into a box set released on Avex Trax in Japan. So that was actually really nice because I wanted to get some of Santers' albums and I was able to get a hold of the debut, but none of the others. I guess unless... I think, yeah, they may have also had some releases in Germany as well, but it was Avex Trax in Japan that put out the whole box set here, which I'm having difficulty putting back together, but there it is. Yeah, with the 4 albums on the back. So what kind of band is Santers? Well, they are a hard rock band again. Although I think it's a little bit difficult to explain, but the way I see it is Santers resembles Triumph in that they are hard rocking bands but with a lot of melody, except that Santers doesn't have Gilmore's really hard-edged feel. They don't have the real kind of intensity or volume of Triumph, and they do have a lot of nice vocal melodies, but I also feel that the vocals are cleaner, and the overall feel is that Santers is more of a clean, younger, nice brother to Triumph. Triumph being the more mature and rough and tumble type of guy. So That's my impression of Santers. I listened to these albums again recently. There were a lot of songs that I'd forgotten about or that I hadn't really picked up on the first couple of times I listened to it when I got this a while back. And I found I enjoyed a lot of the songs much, much more than I remembered. But still, I couldn't get away from that impression that Santers is a nicer, safer band than Triumph ever was. But anyway, you might want to check them out if you're interested in just good, solid, hard-hitting early 80s hard rock with clean vocals and some good vocal harmonies or good vocal melodies, some nice catchy hooks here and there. Check them out. So what is Santers' connection with the Lee Aaron project? Well, actually quite a bit. Rick Santers, Rick Lazaroff, and Mark Santers actually appear on a few of the tracks here, including Lonely for Your Love, the second track on side 1, Night Riders, the third track on side 1, Texas Outlaw, the fourth track on side 1, and also going on to side 2, I Just Want to Make Love to You, features the three Santers members. And I Should Have Known and Took Your Heart Away. So actually, the three Santers boys are involved in about 5 tracks on here, maybe, also with Mark Santers co-writing. Right, so let's keep moving along here on this guitar case. Who is up next? Oh, look at that. There's another Santers sticker there. So we definitely know about Santers. All right, but who else is on here? Let's see here. We're going to go way over to this side here. Oh yes, there's the original Lee Aaron logo. Down here, what does that say? Looks like it says Rabbit. Can we find out more about this? Ah, here we go. Well, would you look at that? Black Sabbath and Rabbit together. What's that story all about? So Rabbit was a band that formed in Ottawa, Ontario. Originally, I believe they were called Telegram, but through some lineup changes, they became Rabbit somewhere in the, I think, late 1970s. The main people in the band that are worth mentioning, Les Nadeau, I think, Nadeau, whatever, is the lead vocalist. And his vocal style, well, you probably haven't heard of them, but there's a Finnish heavy progressive band called Progland. And the vocals of Les Nadeau sound very much like the vocalist of Progland. But anyway, he is probably he could have been a lead singer for Uriah Heep, if you want to put it that way. He's got that very powerful, clean, almost operatic type vocals, which sometimes I find are a little bit overdone when listening to Rabbit's music. Maybe also similar to Michael Sadler's early work with Saga. He was trying to go for that more opera singer type style of rock singer. But mostly I find his vocals are quite agreeable. Also we have Dave Applin on guitar. And also joining the band late in 1979 is John Albani. So Rabbit released one album in Canada originally, and then it was re-released internationally a year later in 1981. Originally it was just called Rabbit, but the international release was called Rough and Ready, and this was followed up in 1982 with Rabbit Tracks. There actually was a fourth album released, I think it was late in 83, called West Side Kid or West Side City Kid or something like that. But the album didn't really do very well, and so the band soon packed it in after that. I don't know how that album sounds, but these two albums here, first listen I thought, okay, that's not bad, there's some good tracks on here, but I was listening to it again recently and trying to pick out some favorite tracks, and I found that there are actually quite a few on both of these albums here that make for some really great songs. They are a heavy band. I mean, the guitars could easily have fit them in with the new wave of British heavy metal or what was going on at that time, but they also featured a lot of keyboards in their music and a lot of vocal harmonies and a lot of melodies. So there is a comparison, like they were originally considered as a kind of heavy, quasi-heavy Styx, but also did Journey and Kansas covers as well as some of their original material. So if you can imagine something like a heavier version of Styx with some Journey mixed in and a bit of a kind of Or Bernie Shaw era Uriah Heep. Not the more recent stuff, but okay, so it's probably their lower rated stuff from, the early 90s. But something like that just sounding a bit better, maybe? I actually quite like a lot of the tunes on these two albums. I'm going to be listening to them more. I want to make a selection of my favorites to make a playlist of just those. But so far I've got 6 or 7 candidates on here. Nice picture on the back. So Rabbit's connection with the Lee Aaron project is not particularly significant. Just guitarist Dave Applin plays on, I think, 2 or 3 of the tracks on the album. However, guitarist Dave Albani would later on join Lee Aaron's band and become her songwriting partner from basically one track on Metal Queen, and then from Call of the Wild in 1985 up to her 1994 album Emotional Rain, he was her songwriting partner and co-wrote most of the songs with her that appeared on her albums over those years. So in that way, Rabbit's contribution to Lee Aaron is actually much, much greater than just Dave Alpin's participation on this Lee Aaron project. Oh, and what's the Black Sabbath connection? Well, obviously from the sticker on the guitar case, Rabbit opened for Black Sabbath when they came. And in a later interview with John Albani, actually a fairly recent one from the last year or so, maybe even 2023, he recalled the time that Rabbit opened for Black Sabbath, and he said Ronnie James Dio was such a nice guy, and they actually exchanged phone numbers, and he said every once in a while Ronnie James Dio would just call him up to ask how things were going. He said he was such a great person, really kind people type person, so that's cool. Anyway, that's Rabbit. Let's take a look at this guitar case and move on a little bit more now. Moving away from Black Sabbath and Rabbit, we are going to see over here Frank Soda and the Imps. So I have this one album here by Frank Soda and the Imps. This is called Soda Pop, and I think it was a 1980 release. Yes, it is. The ingredients are all the album details on here. There's the inside. Frank Soda, so he's actually Italian born but immigrated to Canada before he started school, and I think it was Kitimat, British Columbia where his family settled, and he grew up there. In the 1960s he became enamored with rock music, with the whole British invasion, and by the late 60s he was already playing guitar in a band. He played around. Actually, the band he played in got to open for a lot of bigger name bands when they came up and toured in the I guess, northern BC area, although northern BC is more like central-wise, but anyway, north of Vancouver. And during his experience there in 1973, he actually met John Micklethor, who we know more as Thor, the bodybuilder and musician or singer. So Thor was looking to record an album, and he needed a band for his album, and so he asked Frank Soda and his band to join him. So they all traveled out to Toronto together, but John Micklethor was a pretty big guy, especially as a bodybuilder who had won championships in Canada and the US. He was a pretty big guy. So the rest of the band members were rather scrawny and small compared to him, so Thor called them the Imps, and they decided to go with that name. So it was John Micklethor and the Imps. Now the original album was called Muscle Rock, and I think it was just a Thor album with the band credited as the Imps. But later on, Thor got an offer to appear on the Merv Griffith show, and to do so, he had to accept performing with the house band. If you want to see, there's actually a really poor, I hate to say it, Thor, but there is a very poor performance of Sweet's Action with the Merv Griffin house band. You can find the video on YouTube. Thor comes out with his, bodybuilding pants and cape and his muscles and hairy chest and everything, and I guess it's supposed to make the women of the late 70s drool and go crazy. I think these days women don't like muscular men so much anymore. They certainly don't in Asia. But anyway, because Thor had to go off and do that kind of thing, the Imps were off on their own, and they went and recorded an album on their own and followed it up with this one here, Soda Pop. After this, though, in 1981, they split up, and after that, Frank Soda himself went on to do various things working with individual members of the Imps and other musicians, or working together with other musicians. He kept his musical career going for a long, long time after that. Sometimes in spurts, like he would slow down for a bit, he got married, things would slow down, things would pick up again. But anyway, if we just want to take a look at this album here, this one is actually a really fun one. If you can imagine like Max Webster, but without all the progressive edge to it. This is a fun, hard rockin' album, some serious lyrics, but a bit of zaniness. There's like an underlying zaniness to it. A song like Take My Picture Please. It's about wanting to be in the public eye. Apparently, Frank would appear on stage with a giant camera on his head, and he would actually, it was a working camera, he would take a photograph of the audience wearing that. There was also a song on the previous album about watching too much television, and he would have a television set on his head that would explode. And apparently one time when that happened, it actually turned out to be disastrous, and he burned off half his hair and damaged his skin, burned his skin. And so because he had to shave his hair after that, the rest of the band also shaved their head apparently. But you can see some things of him on YouTube as well. This is a fun album. I actually like quite a lot of the tracks. I just picked it up fairly recently, and I was glad to be able to get a hold of it. So Frank Soda's contribution to the Lee Aaron Project album is the song I Like My Rock Hard, the last one on side A. And this is kind of a funny one. It's a kind of almost like typical early 80s female sung rock track. And you know, I like my rock hard. It's the only music for me. And then Lee singing things like just oh, 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 ah, and yeah, going all orgasmic. Fun stuff anyway, but that was Frank Soda's contribution to this. I think he also plays on here. He plays the guitars on that track as well. Okay, so now let's leave Frank Soda and the Imps and down there Q107 FM Rock in Toronto. And who else can we find here? Oh, look at that. There's another Triumph on tour sticker, as well as Heavy Metal, the logo for the Heavy Metal magazine. Some other radio stations, and here we go. Doucette, Mama Let Him Play. Serious rock and roll. And here he is, Mr. Jerry Doucette, and his first album, Mama Let Him Play. There he is. So Jerry was originally from Ontario, and he later moved out to British Columbia, and actually lived in an... my city was Surrey, and next to Surrey was the municipality of Delta, and part of Delta was an area called Ladner and another part called Tsawwassen, and he actually lived in those areas for a while. But anyway, at the time of this, he was still in Toronto, and this is his first album, Mama Let Him Play, from 1977. Nice picture of the little kid on the floor with the double neck guitar, and there's Jerry with the double neck guitar. Jerry actually just passed away back in 2022, battling cancer, but he continued performing up until 2018. In 2016, he collapsed on stage and was taken off stage and given oxygen, and then he returned, and apparently while people were holding him up, he played out the guitar solo for this song. But anyway, what is this song, Mama Let Him Play? So that was a song that was released as a single and actually did very well in the charts. It was his one kind of big chart-hitting song. It actually reached the Billboard Top 100 in the United States. What is this album like? Well, it is pretty much a 1977 rock and roll album. So some good rockin' tracks, but there are also some more mellow tracks on here, and there are 3 of them in particular. I thought, I don't know exactly what you call this type of, you know, mellow soft rock, but for some reason I'm thinking it might be yacht rock, even though I don't really know what yacht rock is. So I decided to check out our yacht rock playlist on YouTube, and wouldn't you know it, all the first few songs I checked out sounded just like those 3 tracks on this album. So now I kind of know what yacht rock is, and I realize I actually know yacht rock. It does appear on other albums in my collection from the 70s or early 80s. Can't say I'm a big fan of it, but as color on an album, it's acceptable. In a way, it's interesting the way they put this together with the instrumentation, the music, the vocals, everything. I like how they do it. It's interesting in that way, but it's something, again, I want it for flavor on an album. I don't want an album of yacht rock. One funny thing, one of the videos I saw, this guy, he looks like he's in his late 20s, and he's singing about this 16-year-old girl that he's in love with. And right at the very beginning, the girl's father says, "Leave her alone, she's only 16." And then in the video, he keeps trying to like sneak in her bedroom door and, you know, neck with her on the floor and stuff. And I'm thinking, dude, you're like in your late 20s. You do realize she is only 16. I mean, come on. But that's what was apparently quite romantic and interesting in the 1970s. Yeah, I can't imagine. No, it's okay. Won't go there. But anyway, Jerry Doucette. I like this. You know, I think if this wasn't Jerry Doucette, if this wasn't somebody connected with the Lee Aaron project, I wouldn't have just picked it up based on what I heard from this. But because it's connected with the project, I had interest in finding out what's going on. I got it. And there is his second album, The Deuce is Loose, is available on Amazon, so I am thinking to get a hold of that one as well. He did do a third album, I think, but success started going downhill because his style was still more like that late 70s rock sound, and of course by now we had new wave and all this other stuff going on in the pop scene in the early 1980s. But he came back again in the 1990s with another album, so I think he's released 4 studio albums altogether. So Mama Let Him Play is the one that I got not so long ago, and The Deuce is Loose is one that I will try to get a hold of when I have money to do so. So, you may be wondering then, how does Jerry Doucette figure into the Lee Aaron project? Well, as a matter of fact, I actually don't see his name on the back here anywhere. All the credits for who wrote the song and who performed on each of the tracks is listed here. And I honestly don't see Jerry Doucette listed on here anywhere. Also, Jerry Doucette is not a hard rock artist, whereas all the other bands I mentioned are hard rock or, you know, quasi-heavy metal for the time. So I'm not really sure why he's on here. But anyway, thanks to that sticker, I was able to discover this album. And yeah, it's alright. I like it. I'm glad I got it. Bizarre that is, isn't it? So yeah, let's zoom back out again then here, and once more, here is the album cover of the original Lee Aaron project. And that's it, that's where it all began, and thanks to this here now, of course I knew about Santers, I knew about Moxy, I knew about Triumph, but thanks to this I got to know about Frank Soda, Rabbit, and also Jerry Doucette, so fattened up my Canadian collection a little bit more. Okay, that's it. That's all I wanted to talk about today. And thanks you all for watching. See you again in another video sometime soon. Alright, take care everyone. Enjoy the weekend. Bye.